We all struggle with sin. Why does that struggle seem so difficult? Well, I believe we often fail to ask an important question. We fail to ask the why behind the what. When we don't do that, there's a couple things that happen. First, we don't see our sin as sin. We don't recognize it as sin. We either rationalize it, we justify it, we explain it away, or we just don't call it sin. Jerry Bridges has written an entire book entitled Respectable Sins, where he goes through and looks at specific sins that as believers we tend to rationalize and justify and just excuse as if they're okay. So when I don't ask the why behind the what, I'll often ignore my sin, rationalize it, or just not even see it as sin. The second thing that happens is I may see the sin, but now what I do is I try to change that myself. I try to fix my behavior by changing my behavior, and that can just lead to behavior modification at best. Paul David Tripp describes this as an apple tree that has rotten apples on it. And when you look at an apple tree that has rotten apples, the solution to the problem is not take a picture of a nice, shiny, red, delicious apple and then staple it on each of the rotten apples to cover them up. Instead, you have to find out what is causing these apples to be rotten. You've got to get to the root of the tree, the root of the issue, to find out what is producing these rotten apples. Often when we try to just fix ourselves and change our sin, all we're doing is stapling a picture of a nice looking apple on a rotten apple. So we must see sin for what it is, call it what it is, and we've got to turn to God and His resources to deal with the sin in our life. In CTO, we describe this as the root cause of sin, and we have a diagram to help us understand it. The outside circle is our self-protective behaviors and strategies and attitudes. The middle circle is fear, and the bullseye is unbelief and pride. Now let's look at this circle from the outside in. You see, we have these behaviors and attitudes that are sinful and self-protective. They're there because we have feared losing control of our world. And the reason we fear losing control of our world is because our world is out of control. We can't control the people and circumstances that tend to be attacking our kingdom. We can't always avoid pain. So at the center of this circle is really unbelief. See, that's failure to trust God and believe Him and His promises. And when I'm not trusting God, when I'm operating in unbelief, then I'm going to turn to something other than God to bring me life. And pride at the center of that circle says, I deserve to have life on my terms, and I know better than God knows what I need to have in my life. When I'm looking to something other than God for life, it's not coming through. Fear sets in. Fear of pain, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of the future. So out of that fear, I try to find a way to regain control of my world. And that's then when I click into these self-protective, sinful strategies that are all on the outside of this circle. Let's look at it now from the inside out. I don't trust God, and when I don't, I look to something else. Fear sets in. I've got to try to deal with this fear by regaining control of my world. So until I start to see these sinful behaviors and attitudes out here as connected to something deeper, there's a heart issue behind the behavior. That's the why behind the what. And as I begin to say, what is really motivating my behavior? And where is my heart? What it starts to reveal is unbelief and pride. See, your sin out here on the outside of the circle is directly connected to your view of God and your belief in Him and His promises. And they're also connected to your pride that says, I deserve to have life on my terms. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. The gospel addresses both of those. The gospel corrects our view of God, and it corrects our understanding of ourselves. And we can begin to turn to God and His resources. And then His Spirit enables us and gives us the grace to deal with sin in our life. You've got to ask the why behind the what. Your sinful self-protective strategies and behaviors and attitudes are a heart issue, and God wants to change your heart from the inside out.